With the debt crisis grabbing all of the headlines of late, you might think the stimulus is old news. Well, think again.
Wisconsin still has another $1 billion in federal stimulus money to spend. But Fox 6 investigator Brian Polson found that some of the other projects already spent, they're not exactly stimulating much of anything.
Yeah, Brad and Ann, while more than 220,000 Wisconsin workers are struggling to find jobs, we're spending our stimulus money to study clouds in Antarctica, replace streetlights that still work, and purchase iPads for babysitters. Believe it or not, we're spending millions of dollars on a video game for college professors in Madison. And that's just the beginning. When the federal stimulus is finally done raining money on Wisconsin, the Badger State will have piled up more than $4 billion in economic aid.
It has not helped me whatsoever.
Shamia Vaughn is still waiting for one of those jobs that money was supposed to create.
I could see if I was just staying home in bed and not trying, but I'm trying.
Vaughn was working full-time at Wells Fargo until the economy tanked in the fall of 2008 and the bank downsized her department.
They want experience in the restaurant.
She's been looking for work ever since.
It's days I just get desperate and apply to anything, like anybody call me back. I mean, it could be babysitting a frog. I don't care. I just need a job.
There you go.
When President Obama signed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act into law 2 years ago, he promised it would create more than 70,000 new jobs in Wisconsin alone. It did create some jobs for construction workers and road builders. It saved teachers from impending layoffs and allowed local governments to retain police officers and firefighters. Still, according to data we obtained from the White House's own stimulus tracking website, the Recovery Act has employed fewer than 10,000 Wisconsin workers at any given time and fewer than 5,000 workers in the first quarter of this year. In fact, some projects haven't created any jobs at all.
Most of what we use in the ERA funds would be for things that we would have bought anyways.
Jason Wittig is director of the Ozaukee County Transit Service, which used stimulus funds to buy 9 new shared ride taxis, 5 new minibuses, and 22 GPS systems. But after spending nearly $600,000 on all that stuff,
We did not create any direct jobs. All of ours were capital purchases.
the city of Racine wanted to install new streetlights, but Assistant Public Works Commissioner John Rooney decided they were too expensive.
There wasn't really a good cost benefit, payback on that.
That is, until the U.S. Department of Energy showered the city with nearly $800,000 in stimulus money. Suddenly, Racine was replacing 1,500 old high-pressure sodium lights with more energy-efficient LED lights, which are expected to save more than $40,000 a year in electric bills. They even hired an unemployed electrician to install them.
Somebody, got a full-time job for a finite period of time.
So one job.
One job, yes.
Nearly $200 million in stimulus money has been funneled into academic research projects at the University of Wisconsin, like a $584,000 grant to analyze cloud formations in Antarctica, $900,000 to study woody vines in Panama, $1.3 million to research cosmic rays in outer space, and $2 million to create a video game designed to teach UW faculty members about workforce diversity.
If faculty hear that there's some diversity exercise, they're not going.
And that's why UW physician Molly Carnes says she's working with video game developers at the Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery in hopes of making diversity training more fun.
They really have a view of this potentially, going viral.
Carnes would not let us see the rough prototypes of the game, which are already being tested. But she described it as a role-playing game patterned in part after the popular Sims video game series. It's aimed at exposing what she calls the hidden biases that prevent women from reaching leadership roles in science.
We want to change the culture. And in academic institutions, science, engineering, it is the faculty who are the purveyors of change.
Was she serious?
Shamia Vaughn is a big supporter of workplace diversity, but $2 million on a video game?
The program was to create jobs. A video game is not creating a job.
Actually, Carnes says it is.
We are employing now, full-time or part-time, 9 people. on this project.
According to federal data, the $2 million project has created the equivalent of 3.74 full-time jobs. That's more than $500,000 per job.
It did create some jobs, but then the question is, could it have created more jobs? Okay, if it was spent in a more efficient manner.
Marquette economics professor Abdur Chowdhury is a former chief economist for the United Nations in Europe. He says the stimulus was a good idea.
Over the next 2 years, this plan will save or create 3.5 million jobs.
That has failed to live up to expectations.
If you look at why the stimulus was basically enacted in the first place, the reason was to pay for various infrastructure projects. You know, there was this talk about shovel-ready projects.
Instead of building up the nation's infrastructure, much of the money was sprinkled around to projects that had little, if any, connection to jobs. Like a $46,000 grant to the Ho-Chunk Nation to pay for babysitters during a 2-day family wellness retreat last summer. When there was still money left over after the retreat, the tribe came up with an additional project to completely spend the money. They decided to buy iPads and laptops for everyone who helped.
It does raise some questions in the minds of the public.
Even projects that may one day be a huge economic boon for Wisconsin are doing little to help right away.
We've been able to put a world-class facility for the development and testing of battery technology.
Just this week, Johnson Controls unveiled a state-of-the-art car battery research lab in Glendale. It's part of a $300 million stimulus project. But so far, it's only created 135 jobs, and more than half of those are in Michigan.
We see it progressing over time to being a much more important part of the vehicle market.
A significant portion of this money went into long-term projects.
I cry at night sometimes.
Shamia Vaughn can't afford to wait.
So I just trust God that maybe he can open a door for me, because right now it's very rough, very, very rough.
Before the stimulus, the unemployment rate in Wisconsin was 7.7%. Today, more than 2 years later, it's hardly any better at 7.6. But Dr. Chowdhury says he does expect the economy to grow slowly over the next couple of years. And just this week, a little good news for Shamia Vaughn. She finally got a job, albeit part-time.
That is a little bit of good news. And I'm curious, when you talk about jobs created, you're talking about direct jobs, somebody hired to do that job. But what about that person who turns out and they go and buy supplies, cars, a sandwich at lunch? Is there a trickle-down effect?
It's hard to measure that trickle-down effect, but there is one. For instance, the dealership that sold the vehicles to the Ozaukee County Transit Service gets a boost. The streetlight project in Racine actually met a big order for the light manufacturer who's based in Racine County. But Dr. Chowdhury says overall that trickle-down effect has been limited, and that seems kind of evidenced or reflected in the high unemployment numbers that we're still seeing today.
How did you find out about all these obscure, random projects?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a ton of data out there. It's all out there on the internet. There's a lot of transparency, but it's easy to get overwhelmed. Now, we have links on our website right now to many of the places, including recovery.gov, where this information is. We've also put a video together just to try to give you an idea, kind of behind the scenes, of how we came up with some of this stuff and how you might be able to look through some of the stimulus tracking websites that have been set up at both the state and federal level. It's all right now available at fox6now.com.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Thanks.
There's not a